Hello, I'm Jared Taylor with American Renaissance. I started American Renaissance in 1990, 34 years ago, because I thought the United States had made some very bad decisions about race. I thought those mistakes could be corrected. I thought we could change course. But I've been rethinking my goals for some time now, and recently, two things set me off. First, I read a speech given on Robert E. Lee's 100th birthday, January 19, 1907. The speaker was Charles Francis Adams. He was from Massachusetts, the son of President John Quincy Adams and the grandson of President John Adams. Charles Francis Adams was not a friend of the South. During the Civil War, he was U.S. envoy to Britain and almost single-handedly kept it from recognizing the Confederacy. And yet, speaking of Lee, in Lee's home state, he said, "Virginians, whom shall we set apart as one of our sacred men? Him you will set on a high column, that all men, looking at it, may be continually apprised of the duty you expect from them." And indeed, Robert E. Lee was set on high columns all across the South. Even a former enemy from Massachusetts saw what an inspiring model of manhood he was. That was part of the reconciliation of North and South, healing the wounds of the Civil War. Today, that speech by Adams would be like Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts planting a battle flag on Confederate Memorial Day. The nation that sought reconciliation that way is gone. It's dead. Now there's to be no reconciliation with Confederates, and all past acts of reconciliation were grievous moral failings and must be corrected. But that speech by Adams got me thinking about something else. Whom would we put on a high column today? After a little research, I found that we haven't put anyone on a column in over 100 years. The nation that honored citizens in that way is gone, just like the one that tried to heal the wounds of war. Instead, we now take down the men we once put up. Can a nation change more dramatically than that? Men who once enjoyed the highest honors now come down in disgrace. It's not just Confederates. Everything about America and the people who built it has been turned upside down, praise turned into contempt. We're told that Columbus committed genocide, so here he is, face to the ground. George Washington was a miserable slave owner, so he gets a keffiyeh, blindfold, and a Palestinian flag in his eye. Jefferson raped his slave, Sally Hemings, so he's on the ground too. Even Abraham Lincoln, emancipating the slaves, has to be protected against vandals because he was a no-good white man. Jamestown, independence from Britain, the conquest of the continent, becoming a great power. Everything we used to be proud of is now a crime against humanity. What people would rewrite its own history and turn its heroes into monsters? The Germans did, after we helped kill 8 million of them, and they lost a war by unconditional surrender. The occupying victors hanged their leaders, gave them a new government, and a brand new state of mind. The U.S. needed no such trauma. It did it to itself. But if we no longer set heroes on high columns, does that mean we no longer have models to look up to? No, we do. Go to the children's section of a bookstore and look at the biographies. Who are the inspirations for today's children? Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman. You can find children's biographies of Hillary Clinton, Cesar Chavez, Oprah Winfrey. Do you know how many children's biographies of Oprah Winfrey there are? About 40. That's today's equivalent of being set on a high column. We still have the same flag and the same Constitution and the same name, but it's a different country. And the required mentality for whites in this new country is one of apology, if not outright self-hatred. Here's an almost random example. You probably don't remember a New Yorker named Julie Powell. She wrote a book about cooking that was made into a movie. Aside from that, she was an ordinary woman, bad marriage and all. But she casually wrote things like this on X. White people are fucking horrible. Murdering all of us would be a totally sound decision. I really can't see the argument for slaughtering white people in the streets. Why would a white woman do that? It's because if people tell you over and over that you are an evil, psychopathic race, some will believe it. Back in 1967, when author Susan Sontag wrote that the white race is the cancer of human history, she was way ahead of her time. A few people are fighting back. In September 2020, very near the end of his term, Donald Trump issued an executive order on combating race and sex stereotyping. It barred any part of the government from teaching what the order called divisive concepts. Among these were, one race or sex is inherently superior to another. An individual, by virtue of his or her race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive. An individual, by virtue of his or her race or sex, bears responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or sex. Meritocracy, or traits such as a hard work ethic, are racist or sexist, or were created by a particular race to oppress another race. I won't even ask why Donald Trump thought he had to issue an order banning those ideas from government training programs. What's more important is that Joe Biden, on Inauguration Day itself, revoked that executive order. He thought it was so important to get that off the books that he revoked it the very day he walked into the White House. But I may be the only guy who noticed. No one asked him, "Joe, are you inherently an oppressor and personally responsible for slavery? Did white people invent meritocracy as an excuse to oppress black people?" But it was top priority for our new president to make sure that people in government could teach that stuff. Mr. Biden also issued an executive order commanding the entire 2.7 million man federal bureaucracy to submit plans to discriminate in favor of Black, Latino, Indigenous and Native American, Asian American, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander persons and other persons of color, and of course, LGBTQI plus persons. That plus, I think, is for all the aberrations yet to be discovered. Well, who got left out? Heterosexual white people. That's because we are the ones mercilessly grinding everyone else down. This sort of thing has consequences. There was a famous study by Ann Case and Angus Deaton. They found that whites were dying of suicide, alcoholism, and drug overdose at twice the black rate, what they called deaths of despair. They later reported that white death rates, and only white death rates, had risen so quickly that life expectancy for the whole country fell 3 years in a row, 2015, 16, 17. That was before COVID. And each younger generation of whites was worse off than the generation before. When the two researchers first tried to publish this, academic journals told them to get lost. How dare you work on whites? Professors under fire for researching white mortality. That should have told them something. But when Case and Deaton published a book, they called it Deaths of Despair and the Future of Capitalism. Right, capitalism is the problem. Not one word about the message that is preached from the White House on down, that white people are a scourge. Not one hint that some of those whites might be getting the message and drinking themselves to death or overdosing or shooting themselves. How do you solve a problem like this? When I started American Renaissance 34 years ago, things weren't so bad. I thought the country could be set back on track. Not anymore. I can still live here. I see through the anti-white propaganda. I can even laugh at its absurdities. You probably can too. Even though the dangers of multiracialism, both physical and psychological, get worse every year, the fortunate among us can still pick our ways through them. Well, we shouldn't have to be the fortunate ones. No white person should have to live under an occupation government. Mental, psychological, and moral occupation. All my life, I've watched the United States degenerate. It's no longer my country, and it can't be saved. I do not believe that it can ever again become a home for white people. Any lefty who heard me say that would start roaring about white privilege and how we benefited from slavery, and then end up basically admitting we're lucky we don't have all our throats slit. Can you think of a realistic way to take America back, as Republicans keep saying? It can't be taken back. It doesn't matter who's elected president this year, or 4 years from now, or 40 years from now. It's over. We can't take the whole country back. We'll have to settle for something less. Here's what we're up against. In the Atlantic last year, Trumpism is the last gasp of a dying culture of white supremacy. The guy who orders the government not to teach that any race is inherently superior to any other is the last gasp of white supremacy. Psychologically, we live in a different country from people who think that. Well, let's make it official. Let us part amicably and go our own way. There is no other solution. Whether I live to see it or not, there will be an ingathering of our people on this continent, and we will finally succeed in building a new home in North America for Europeans and their civilization. White people deserve to live in a country that does not tell them that they are dirt. Is that too much to ask? No. It's something every people, everywhere, deserves. But it's not going to happen in the current United States of America. I'll say it again. White people must have a country that does not tell them they are dirt. That's non-negotiable. Our children must live in a nation that honors our traditions, fulfills our destiny, a nation that produces great men like Washington and Lee, a nation that sets such men on a high tower to inspire men to be even greater. Thank you for watching. The censors hate my videos, so if you like this one, please send the link to a lot of people. I invite you to subscribe to this video channel. Also, please visit amren.com, amren.com. You'll find videos, podcasts, discussions, a lot of things I think will interest you a bit. Again, thank you so much for watching.